All right. Someone's got to take last place, so might as well put a pin in it. I love Jon Pertwee. Ruffled shirt, Venusian Aikido, reverse the polarity.
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow.
He's the first modern action doctor, but his regeneration into Tom Baker is a crossfade. Now granted, that happened because John decided to leave the show after his friend Roger Delgado, who played the Master, was in a car crash and died. They'd had all these stories planned where it turned out the Doctor and the Master were secret brothers, and that whole last season basically got scrapped and completely rewritten, so I get it. Pertwee filmed his death scene feeling pretty justifiably blue, and then he just kind of had to get out of there. But still, I mean, it's a crossfade. Colin Baker was the Doctor when the show went on extended hiatus. It was gonna get canceled. But then, Colin and the fans fought that off by having him and some other people sing a song to save the show called Doctor in Distress.
There were evil metal creatures who tried to exterminate.
And it was distressing. I mean, best just to leave it there. Anyway, the show was saved, which is great, but Colin got the sack, so he refused to show up to regenerate, which made for a pretty shoddy visual transition. But points to Sylvester McCoy for putting on that coat of many colors. It's nauseating. Let's move on. John Hurt was great as the Doctor's secret regeneration, the War Doctor. But since Christopher Eccleston refused to return, the closest we get to that regeneration is a bit of glowing and some blue eyes, which is very pretty, but far from fantastic.
Fantastic!
Gosh, it was neat when Paul McGann turned up for the first time on the actual Doctor Who show proper in nearly 20 years, and then he regenerates. And it hurts. That's a joke because he regenerates into John Hurt. Anyway, but it really does look painful. And then we see a young John Hurt in a reflection because John Hurt was actually very old at the time, and so the BBC had to cheat. But it looks, you know, perfectly satisfactory. Meanwhile, when Matt Smith regenerates, he gets a beautiful death speech, all full of meaning and bow ties falling and Matt's wig and Karen Gillan's wig, and then there's like a whiplash regeneration, and suddenly Peter Capaldi doesn't have a wig at all, just new kidneys. I like it, it's just very quick is all. But when Patrick Troughton regenerates, it takes a while, partly because the showrunners hadn't actually cast a new actor to play the Doctor yet. So he just spins around, and it makes him giddy. I don't know, I liked it. He makes a silly face, it's adorable. Hey, remember when David Tennant was like,
I don't want to go.
but then he, you know, totally goes? It's a good regeneration. It nearly blows up the whole TARDIS. It gets so blown up that Matt Smith gets bits of it in his mouth and then he has to spit them out. That was totally in the moment too, unscripted. Blown up ship, running around, spit. That's a formula for a great regeneration, you ask me. But I think the regeneration from Eccleston into Tennant edges it out, specifically because you can actually see Tennant's face kind of forming. It's sort of gross, actually. But I think regeneration should be a little gross, right? I mean, your entire body is changing. It's like adolescence, but worse. Regeneration. It's like a full body pimple suddenly exploding. Wink. You know what I love though? Spanny faces. But instead of just a Troughton face, how about all the companions instead? That's what Peter Davison gets when he regenerates into Colin Baker. And then the Master shows up and is like, "Die, Doctor! You must die!" I am not the Master. Anyway, the best bit is that the visuals actually set up that Colin Baker's Doctor will be more volatile, which, yeah, he chokes a companion out, so pretty volatile. However, there's not much tops Tom Baker regenerating into Peter Davison because
the moment has been prepared for.
And you know that because Tom Baker says so. Oh, and there's a guy called the Watcher who is also the Doctor, and then the Watcher merges with the Doctor's face until it's paper mache, and then Peter Davison is born. That's how I plan to explain where babies come from to my kids someday. And that's why this regeneration is great, and also why I shouldn't have children. And you know how I criticized the crossfade of Pertwee to Baker as being the least good regeneration? Well, the way the show regenerated the first time from Hartnell to Troughton is kinda similar, but it looks amazing. Seriously, how did they manage this in 1966? It literally looks like a man's face slowly changes into a completely different man's face. And it's the only footage from that episode that remains, which is lucky because it's nearly the best regeneration has ever looked. Now, before I reveal the best regeneration, I just want to quickly point out some other regenerations, all of which are very good. Like Mel turning into River Song, it's pretty good. Or the General regenerating into a black lady. You don't see that very much, but you know. Huge props also go to Jon Pertwee and the fan film Doctor Who Devious, which actually shows an unofficial second to third Doctor regeneration. This was shot less than a year prior to Pertwee's death, and he still lived for playing the Doctor. And I think the best other regeneration is when Derek Jacobi's Master turns into John Sim. He literally screams into his new body. That's terrifying. Perfect Master regeneration. But the best regeneration of all comes from the most unlikely of places. The American-produced 1996 Doctor Who TV movie. Sylvester McCoy comes back, gets shot, and then, in the morgue, as an assistant watches Frankenstein, we get the most unsettling and alien regeneration ever. The way McCoy and McGann contort their faces takes what Troughton did and makes it scary. And then the best bit is seeing McGann's first breath. No glowy hands, no blow-up TARDIS, no crossfade, just a bona fide moment where a man literally appears to creak and crack until he is a completely different being. Amazing. And that's it. Regeneration. It's a lottery. Which one's your favorite? If you had a full body pimple explode into a new person, how would you want to do it? Me? I think I'd glow and contort and then have a man in a goatee tell me to die, but you know, I'm a romantic that way. See you next time.